There is a version of Brian May that almost everyone knows. The legendary guitarist behind Queen's unmistakable sound, the musician with the homemade guitar that became iconic, and the player whose tone could make a single note feel enormous. But there is another side to his story, not a scandalous one, but a more complicated journey shaped by ambition, precision, expectations, and the enormous shadow of Queen's legacy. How does an artist continue creating when his greatest work is already considered legendary? And what happens when the world expects you to sound exactly like the person you were decades earlier? To understand Brian May's legacy, you have to look beyond the famous solos and recognize the unusual path that made his music so distinctive. Long before Queen became one of rock's defining bands, May was already developing an approach that separated him from conventional guitar players. His famous Red Special was built with his father, using materials that were far removed from the polished instruments normally associated with professional musicians. Yet that unusual beginning became part of his identity. Instead of chasing someone else's sound, May developed an instrument and playing style around what felt natural to him. That decision mattered because May's guitar was never simply about speed. His playing was about melody, harmony, and emotion. He often approached the guitar almost like another voice inside a song. But that wasn't the full story. With Queen, May found himself inside an extraordinary musical environment. Freddie Mercury brought an unmistakable vocal personality, Roger Taylor added powerful rhythmic energy, and John Deacon brought his own sense of musical balance. May's role was different. He helped build the architecture around the songs, creating guitar parts that could be beautiful, dramatic, and instantly recognizable without overwhelming the composition. That balance became one of his greatest strengths, and eventually one of his biggest challenges. When audiences hear a Queen song, they often expect the familiar sound immediately. But an artist cannot spend an entire career simply repeating the past. May had to find ways to respect Queen's musical identity while continuing to evolve as a musician. Few people noticed how difficult that balance could become. After Queen's classic era, May's career continued through solo projects, collaborations, performances, and new interpretations of the music that had made him famous. His influence also extended beyond guitar. He became associated with songwriting, production ideas, musical education, and a broader appreciation for the craft behind rock music. Yet perhaps the most interesting part of May's legacy is that his greatest achievement was never just technical ability. His influence comes from proving that individuality can be more important than perfection. The Red Special was unusual. His tone was unusual. His approach to harmony was unusual. And somehow, those differences became the sound millions of people recognize. What happened next changed the way many guitarists viewed him. Instead of becoming remembered simply as the guitarist from a legendary band, May became an example of how an artist can build an identity strong enough to survive changing musical eras. Younger players could study his phrasing, his harmonies, his layered guitar arrangements, and his remarkably patient approach to melody. And that may be the most complicated part of his legacy. Brian May's story is not simply about being one of rock's greatest guitarists. It is about living with an extraordinary musical history while still searching for something personal within it. His greatest lesson may be surprisingly simple. Originality does not always come from having more. Sometimes it comes from taking the unusual things you already have and turning them into something unmistakably your own.